Boeing's crisis is...
Boeing has had a pretty awful track record.
2 astronauts from Boeing's Starliner are now awaiting a decision on when they can return home from space.
Boeing is in utter crisis.
Boeing's CFO says the company is burning through more cash than expected.
It had been delivered by the manufacturer Boeing.
In June of 2024, in a major milestone for Boeing, 2 astronauts, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, flew on the Starliner during its first crewed mission to space. But since then, things have taken a dramatic turn for the worse. Starliner has since faced significant setbacks, including the troubling issue of leaving the astronauts stranded in space, blowing through billions of dollars. And, in a shocking blow to Boeing, NASA seems to have lost complete trust in Starliner ability. Is this the beginning of the end for Starliner? Will Starliner's future be doomed by these setbacks? And will NASA ultimately decide to end its involvement with the spacecraft? Stay with us as we explore these questions and unravel how one of the most significant space programs may be on the brink of collapse. When Boeing announced that it was launching its first ever crewed mission, it was quite the news. Until then, despite receiving billions from NASA, Boeing had never successfully sent a crew to space. However, it soon became clear that this mission was doomed from the start. After 2 of NASA's most experienced astronauts, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, stepped into Starliner, the goal was to remain at the International Space Station for 8 days and conduct critical tests and experiments to ensure the spacecraft's readiness for future missions. But after a while, it was evident that a significant issue had arisen.
Problems for Starliner, more leaks and failing thrusters are complicating the flight test.
Yeah, astronauts Sunny Williams and Butch Wilmore are safe at the space station right now, but docking came with some unexpected challenges.
Its thrusters were malfunctioning, and there were serious reports of helium leaks, turning what should have been a routine mission into a potential disaster. These problems raised serious concerns about the safe return of the crew. NASA then enlisted a team of experts to assess the persistent issues with the Starliner, but despite their best efforts, the spacecraft failed to meet expectations. This would leave the astronauts with no hope of return.
2 astronauts stranded in space. What's up with that?
But things were about to get a lot worse. In a humiliating twist for Boeing, NASA finally declared that the Starliner was unsafe to fly with the astronauts inside. But that's not the whole story. Due to Boeing's incompetence, NASA finally made the call to bring both Suni and Butch back to Earth on its rival spacecraft rather than risk their safety.
NASA has decided that Butch and Sunny will return with Crew 9 next February.
However, since Dragon is scheduled for takeoff on the 24th of this month and will not return until February 2025, Suni and Butch would remain in space for a while, 6 whole months longer than they anticipated.
Turned an 8-day mission into a 6-month nightmare.
Since spacecraft are typically allowed to carry only 4 seats, NASA will send only 2 astronauts to make space for the stranded astronauts on board the Dragon. While this represents progress for the astronauts, the recent development was quite the embarrassment for Boeing. After nearly 3 months at the space station, Starliner made a soft landing at White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. But without its astronauts,
after months of questions about safety, Boeing's Starliner capsule has successfully returned to the Earth from the International Space Station without its crew on board.
Oh wait, did you just leave astronauts in space?
But despite Boeing's effort to present the return as a success, many experts and critics are raising serious concerns about the program's reliability. Here's why. This capsule was initially designed to carry astronauts into space and rival SpaceX's Crew Dragon, but instead it returned to Earth, leaving the astronauts behind. Another issue arose from Boeing's insistence that Starliner could bring its crew back to Earth. When the news first became public, Boeing was quite adamant and boldly claimed that they could use the Starliner to safely return the astronauts back to Earth.
Boeing has said, just sort of simply put, that Starliner is ready to go, and the data supports using Starliner to take the 2 astronauts back to Earth.
But the criticism didn't stop there. Critics are arguing that the spacecraft should never have been allowed to fly in the first place.
Boeing has faced a lot of technical challenges with developing this vehicle all the way back to 2019.
It is important to note that the issues with Starliner's design began long before its current mission. When Boeing carried out its test just before the launch, helium leaks were detected. This was linked to a damaged seal in the propulsion system. There were also issues with the thrusters, which raises an important question. Why did Boeing proceed with its first crewed test without addressing the root cause of the thruster issues discovered in the previous test? This was a mistake that no multi-billion-dollar space program should ever make.
What words would you use to describe that factory at that point?
Dangerous, unnecessary, taking unnecessary risk, chaotic, disarray.
At this point, there's a pressing question that we all can't seem to ignore. What will the next 6 months be like? Now, although Suni and Butch have spent long periods of time on the ISS and already know what it's like to be there for an extended period, there will be some challenges in the next 6 months. To shed more light on this, Neil deGrasse Tyson, an American astrophysicist and space enthusiast, provided insight into their living space and how it works.
Where are our 2 stranded astronauts? In the International Space Station. Do you know how big the space station is? In total, with solar panels included, it's the size of a football field. Whereas these capsules are the size of the love seat in your living room.
Sleep station right here. I'm going in right now. You can follow me if you want. So I'm inside. It's sort of like a little phone booth.
While these insights shed light on the living conditions at the space station, there are some unexpected challenges that even experts might not anticipate. One such instance occurred when Butch Wilmore and Sunita Williams reported hearing strange, disturbing noises coming from the Boeing Starliner and called to report the issue.
There's a strange noise coming through the speaker, and I didn't know if you could connect into the Starliner and let me keep mic and let you hear. I don't know what's making it, but I don't know if it's something that maybe is connected between here and there, making that happen. But anyway, can you do that?
We can configure that, Butch. Give us a minute, and I'll call you back when it's ready.
But when did Boeing's reliability first start to raise serious doubts? It's important to note that it hasn't always been this way. When NASA awarded Boeing a contract to develop spacecraft for transporting astronauts to the International Space Station, Boeing, with its long history in aerospace, seemed like a safe bet. However, what followed was a series of failures and setbacks. December 2019 should have been the year Boeing showcased its true potential. Instead, it experienced a major setback when its first uncrewed test flight failed to reach the correct orbit due to a software error. NASA's investigation uncovered 61 issues, raising serious concerns about the program's reliability.
What ended up happening is the spacecraft tried to maintain a very precise control that it normally wouldn't have tried to maintain, and it burned a lot of prop in that part of the flight.
Almost 2 years later, in August 2021, Boeing's second uncrewed test attempt was once again unsuccessful and faced multiple delays due to valve issues. Finally, in May 2022, even though Starliner managed to reach the ISS, it encountered problems due to multiple thruster failures. In hindsight, this was a sign of things to come.
This is yet another event that points to a deficient quality control mechanism within Boeing.
And then there's the issue of money, your money. 14 years ago, in 2010, Boeing received a total of $92.3 million during the initial phase to develop the Starliner concept. In 2014, they were awarded a whopping $4.2 billion under the Commercial Crew Transportation Capability Program to complete Starliner development and conduct crewed missions to the ISS. Additionally, in 2020, NASA added $287.2 million to the contract to cover delays and additional work. And then, in 2021, Boeing received a $130 million payment as part of a contract adjustment to address further costs and work.
That's quite big.
Yes, that's billions of dollars in taxpayer funds, costing the US government a lot of money. On top of that, when we break down these funds, we can see that the program has been a complete waste. In 2022, Boeing's financial records showed losses of $1.47 billion, and the following year, due to wiring issues, there was a reported loss of $250 million. And just this year alone, Boeing's financial records revealed a loss of $125 million due to the mission's delays. When added up, this brings the total loss to $1.6 billion.
That is wild!
As more issues are uncovered, Starliner's future looks increasingly bleak. There's also the question of whether Boeing can get the Starliner fixed before an operational crewed mission next year. This next mission was originally scheduled for August 2025, but if Boeing is unable to fix the issues with its thruster and helium leaks, it could take years. Let's not forget that this could also push back the 6 crewed flights planned as part of its contract with NASA. While Boeing is currently scrambling to fix its mistakes, SpaceX is not waiting for Starliner to catch up. In contrast, SpaceX's Crew Dragon has completed multiple crewed missions. Starliner has yet to carry a single astronaut. So far, SpaceX has successfully launched 9 crew missions for NASA and is set to launch its 10th mission before the month is over, highlighting the growing gap between Boeing and SpaceX. On top of that, SpaceX's Crew Dragon recently hit a milestone. After spending 5 days in orbit, its first privately funded mission, the Polaris Dawn mission, made history with the world's first commercial spacewalk. In the recent update shared by SpaceX, it was also revealed that the 4 crew members aboard the Dragon went farther into space than anyone has in the last 50 years. What makes this situation more problematic is that when NASA awarded Boeing a contract worth $4.2 billion, SpaceX received $2.6 billion, a significantly smaller amount. Boeing had more funding, and now SpaceX is ahead.
Who arrives to Mars first, SpaceX or Boeing?
Boeing.
The implications are clear. SpaceX's Dragon has become the preferred choice. But that's not all. Even NASA has hinted that it may shift more focus and funding towards SpaceX and other competitors like Russia, signaling the eroding trust with Starliner. The next few years will either make or break Boeing's Starliner. What do you think? Is Boeing's Starliner doomed to be remembered as the worst space program of our time? Or more importantly, what does this mean for the future of Starliner?